All right, we're going to do something a little different today. We're stepping back in time, all the way to 1915, to see a really pivotal year through the eyes of one young man, Lyle Carringer. This is the story of how his kind of sleepy hometown of San Diego was suddenly, and I mean suddenly, thrust onto the world stage. You know, this one quote from Lyle's dad, it just says it all, doesn't it? You can feel that mix of disbelief, pride, and just pure excitement. It's a city right on the edge of a massive transformation, and as we'll see, so is our main character. So, let's meet him. This is Lyle Carringer. He's 23 years old, works as a department store clerk. Is living at home, trying to work his way up in the world, and his life, along with his entire city, is about to be completely flipped upside down by this one extraordinary event, the Panama, California Exposition. Okay, so try to picture this. It's New Year's Day, 1915. Lyle and his buddies are absolutely crammed onto a streetcar. I mean, it is packed so tight it's practically bursting at the seams. And everyone, absolutely everyone, is heading to Balboa Park for the opening day of the exposition. The energy in the air is just electric.
And the price of admission to see all this wonder? 50 cents. Yeah, sounds like pocket change to us today, but believe me, for a young guy like Lyle back in 1915, that was a pretty big deal.
I mean, think about it. That 50-cent ticket, it was a real investment for him. It represented almost a full day of hard work, so this wasn't just some casual afternoon outing. It was an event he had to save up for, which just shows you how monumental this day felt to the average person in San Diego. So as Lyle gets closer to the park, he sees it, the brand new, incredible Cabrillo Bridge. And the construction cost? $250,000. In 1915, that number was so vast, so astronomical, that a guy like Lyle could barely even wrap his head around it. And that's when it clicks. Seeing that magnificent bridge, the soaring towers in the distance, he finally understood. This was not just some local fair. This was history in the making, and it was happening right here, in his own backyard. All right, so once he's inside, what did Lyle and his friends actually do? Well, they were just hit with this incredible explosion of sights and sounds. They literally spent hours just wandering around, completely mesmerized. One minute, they're surrounded by these lush, exotic plants in the botanical building. The next, they're finding a moment of peace in the Japanese tea garden. Then, they're looking at these amazing engineering exhibits before diving into the fun and chaos of the boardwalk, which everyone called the Isthmus. And right here, in his own words, you can just feel Lyle's curiosity. I mean, for a young man who'd lived his entire life in San Diego, seeing a miniature, working model of the Panama Canal's locks, wow. It was like he could finally reach out and touch the wider world. It made this huge global event feel real. But get this, just 8 days later, something else happens that completely overshadows the fair itself. On January 9th, this insane road race drew an estimated 50,000 spectators out to Point Loma. Look at that. It absolutely dwarfed the 6,000 or so people who went to the exposition that day. The entire city was completely captivated by the race.
And it was just pure spectacle. We are talking 51 brutal, grueling laps on dirt roads. You had the world's most legendary drivers pushing these early machines to their absolute limit. It was loud, it was dusty, and it was incredibly dangerous. Only 5 cars out of 18 even managed to finish. And Lyle was right there with his camera, capturing all that thrilling chaos. But of course, life wasn't all World's Fairs and death-defying car races. The exposition was really the backdrop to Lyle's everyday rhythm. The grind of work, time with family, and just the simple pleasures of being young in this up-and-coming city. His life really had these two totally distinct sides. During the week, he was a floor walker at a busy department store. It was a demanding job, supervising clerks, dealing with customer complaints. But on the weekends, he found total freedom at Coronado Beach, just swimming in the ocean and having fun with his friends. So as the year went on, it became really clear that the exposition was so much more than just an event. It was a catalyst. This was the year San Diego stopped being a little town and truly started to become the city we know today. And throughout the whole year, there was this steady stream of major events that just kept the energy buzzing. You had the spectacle of opening day, the absolute thrill of the road race, the grandeur of a huge Catholic Day ceremony, and even a visit from 2 of the most famous men on the planet.
That's right. When Thomas Edison and Henry Ford visited in October, they were greeted by 12,000 schoolchildren who literally buried them in flowers. Can you even imagine that scene? It was such a massive deal that Lyle actually raced from his job just to try and catch a glimpse of these American icons right there in his city. And the magic? It definitely didn't stop when the sun went down. Lyle loved visiting the park at night. Every building was outlined with these new electric lights, turning the whole place into what people called a fairyland. Plus, the admission price dropped to just a quarter, which made it this affordable, magical escape for him. And this whole experience was transforming Lyle too. At his job downtown, he found himself constantly giving directions and recommendations to tourists who were flooding in from all over the country. He wasn't just a store clerk anymore. He had become an unofficial ambassador, just filled with this incredible new pride for the city he called home. So, as 1915 started to draw to a close, it was naturally a time for reflection. What was the true impact of this incredible, wild year on both Lyle and on the city of San Diego itself? Well, if you just look at the numbers, it was a massive success. The exposition pulled in over 2 million visitors by the end of the year. It put San Diego on the map and even turned a little bit of a profit. But the real value, it wasn't in the dollars and cents.
The real value was in moments like this. One night in November, Lyle was standing in the park, and it was nearly empty, and he was just overcome with this profound sense of gratitude. He knew with total certainty that he was living through his city's greatest moment. He was witnessing history firsthand.
Of course, standing there at 24 years old, he had no way of knowing what the future held for him. He didn't know that a world war was just around the corner, or that he would soon meet the love of his life, or that he would go on to build a long, honorable life right there in the city he loved so much. In that moment, he was simply a young man full of wonder. And that really brings us to our final thought here. For Lyle Carringer, 1915 was the year that he and his city kind of grew up together. It was a year of wonder that shaped his perspective for the rest of his days. And it kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it? How does a single pivotal year define a place, or maybe even a person?